Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Curious Competitor podcast. I'm your host, current New Jersey Devils defenseman, Carrick. I am very excited about our guest today. He is a mentor of mine, Giovanni Marsico. He is one of the most open-hearted, open-minded business leaders I've ever been around. He's really the catalyst even for this podcast. He identified me as a young man who had something to say in the world, who had some good to contribute, and he has helped me leverage it ever since and has really been beyond generous in connections and trying to help me with the right people to learn how to go into this craft and how to help myself help others. He is the founder of Archangel Academy, and in the live form, he does these big, awesome, thousands of people filled events called Archangel Summit. And then he has just launched his Dreamer documentary, which he is extremely proud of, which will come through in this podcast. It's outstanding. I've seen it. And that really captures Giovanni. He really is the brightest, most powerful dreamer that I have met to date. He organizes his life around being able to do so. And I'm very happy to share how generous he was with his time today on how he's able to do that. And I know you will learn something from this brilliant man, as I so have myself. Thank you for joining us. Giovanni Marsico, welcome to the Curious Competitor podcast. Probably, if I had to pick one person most responsible for the fact that I have a podcast, aside from Lexi, who introduced me to the art form, you might be the cause. You might be the catalyst. And I know you take a lot of pride in that part of your personality, being able to identify, strengths and weaknesses in different people and helping them explore that about themselves. Take me through, because I know you got this so integrated and dialed in, your origin story a little bit to who you are today and how we met and how we're having this conversation.
Well, to me, it's the funniest story. So amongst a bunch of things, we produce a large scale experience for entrepreneurs, for leaders, for change makers called Archangel Summit. That gets thousands of people, typically in person. This year's been a little different. But we've done it for 5 years in a row. And after the event, and this is like a lot of thought leaders on stage speaking, entertainment, really big production. And then after the experience, for anyone who has a VIP ticket, we do a dinner. And often during the dinner, we'll go up to different attendees, thanking them for coming, interact. And you, at one point, my now fiance, Dr. Stephanie, and I were sitting for dinner, and you and a friend approached us to thank us for the event. I had no idea who you were, which was hilarious. And typically when someone in my world says, because I think I asked you, what do you do? And you said,
Yep.
we're in professional sports or something along those lines. I'm like, oh, cool. You must be some kind of entrepreneur, some coach, something. So I asked a deeper question. And I think at the time you said, well, I'm with the Toronto Maple Leafs and my buddy's with the Washington Capitals. And then it was like, oh, crap. I should know these things living in Toronto. I think it formed a fun friendship. And then we've become friends and have had epic conversations and gotten to know each other a lot better since then. But to me, it's still one of my favorite stories from the event because I don't watch television. I will watch sports for specific reasons. But again, it was just hilarious.
Well, and I remember the reason I even had a ticket was, I forget who I, had connected with, but they connected with you, and I knew it was during training camp with the Toronto Maple Leafs, or I think it was right before training camp. What was it? I think it was 2017, maybe 2018. I think 2018, because I got moved out of town, I think, after that training camp. Besides the point. And it was like, it's really cool looking back, because it was one of those little actions that's had massive repercussions. And I know you have a close relationship with serendipity, which is a word that,
Yep.
You've really, it's become contagious for me, and I've started to look for it. But it was basically, I was drinking like those butter coffees at the time, and you had Dave Asprey talking and Dr. Hyman. I just picked up his book. So it was really, I wanted to go to the event for information on physical health. I'm an athlete. I wanted an edge. I knew what time they were speaking. We were practicing in the morning, and I knew I could get to the Archangel Summit, at some point before they had hit the stage. And I was just blown away by the quality of person and leader that was present as audience members of the group, like the different conversations I had. And what exactly is Archangel Summit? How did you become this modern day? If anyone goes to look at your Instagram, or as Jim Quick, I asked Jim Quick for some dirt on you prior to the podcast, and he had nothing, but he was oozing with positivity, saying, Giovanni Marsico is my Professor X, and I would follow him anywhere. So what is your story behind becoming a modern day Professor X, and what can our audience learn about themselves through the lens of your story with that?
Well, I feel like I live in a dream, and that's kind of the point, where my life now is a real life superhero movie, where I'm surrounded by people like you who have giant hearts. They have a gift that they want to share with a lot of people, that they want to help a lot of people. And to me, we are modern day superheroes. The fictional stories that we see that I fell in love with as a kid are actually things that we can create. Now, we may not be able to fly, or at least not yet, but we can create change and positive impact. And, growing up, I'll share the quick story. I was in elementary school, and I went to a new school, and it was at a time when they did IQ testing, and I was labeled as gifted with a very high IQ. And I started getting bullied in school and hated the word gifted because of the connection to the bullying. And then in high school, discovered comic books, discovered the X-Men. And on my very first X-Men page that I opened, it said Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. And the word gifted showed up again, but this time it meant superpower. And it meant people who had a gift that they can share. And it changed my life. And back then, this is in high school, I thought, when I grow up, I want to be a real life Professor X. And it was almost a joke at the time. And my friends would think I'm crazy, but that crazy joke turned into a real life business that's doing super well, and a global community of people like us who all want to inspire a lot of people. And that's also led to producing a film, that's led to giant events, coaching programs, all sorts of fun things where every day I love what I do. I don't ever feel like, people use the word work in a negative context usually. Like, I have to go to work. To me, I get to go to work. I get to create. I get to be an artist. I get to help people. It's awesome.
Well, and there's a little tipping of the sign of your love for etymology and your ability to be, so decisive with your words. And I think what's super cool about your ability, and for anyone who hasn't been to Giovanni's events, look into Giovanni's Facebook group, his Instagram. Truly an incredible group of individuals from every time zone I know of. I've been able to be a part of 2 events now, the in-person and one of the virtual. How did you, I think this is cool, because in high school you skipped one part, the DJ part. I only know this because I've heard the story before. So what role did DJing play? And how did this circle back into your life after, you had gained some stable ground? And I understand, for people who are listening who may not know your background, you were able to, kind of get some stable financial footing with your life in the real estate world. And all these thoughts, the Professor X, gifted, DJing, events, not really loving what you do, but having some free brain space and time to spend time with people who did love what they do. How did all that alchemy come together and become the Archangel Academy that is today?
When I was 16, my best friend and I started going to what in Toronto was called all ages dance parties. So parties for teenagers where you didn't need ID. There was no alcohol. It was more about just having fun. And we thought, we can do this. We can probably do this better. And we know a lot of people. So we, I don't know how, but at 16 years old, rented an Italian banquet hall, printed flyers, produced an event, had sound and lighting, all this crazy stuff. And at the time I was already DJing for little events and, birthday parties. And we had 1,000 people show up. And it was at the end of that event, we were blown away thinking, I can't believe we can do something so much fun that we love to do, bringing people that we love together, and we're making money. And that started my event production career, even though there was a lot of resistance from my family, parents, and teachers and stuff to do the traditional route of, get a safe job, go get your degree, get all that stuff, which I never ended up doing. I graduated high school. I went to university first for engineering, which was a challenge getting into, and then even bigger challenge staying, because I didn't want to be an engineer. The people who wanted to be engineers were ripping their hair out because it's so challenging. So I dropped out, and that wasn't a very fun time. And I also, at the same time, stopped doing events, even though at one point we had 5,000 people a week coming to our
Wow.
all ages dance party things. We had concerts. We had, it was fun. It was hilarious. But I stopped that. And then it was the first time I ever experienced anxiety and depression, because something felt like it was missing or not aligned. And through a series of events, I really fell in love with marketing back then too. So I started doing marketing jobs. My last job I ever had was doing the marketing at a company called Strategic Coach, run by a guy named Dan Sullivan, who, it was the best job ever, because I got to be around all these successful entrepreneurs and discovered that that's who I am. And I left that role to start my own marketing, coaching, and consulting business. And that led me into real estate, because one of my clients, I was helping them scale their business, and we crushed it. So she said, why don't you quit your consulting, partner with me, do all the marketing, and we'll do really well. I did, and I actually got my real estate license, but I never liked it at all. And I didn't understand the idea of alignment with your path and who you are and all that kind of stuff. Back then, to me, it was, I have to pay the bills and I have to make money. And that was what was taught to me. But again, it always felt like something was missing, and there was no fulfillment and meaning. It was just about chasing money. And I did really well. And that allowed me to invest in myself and personal development and going to mastermind events and big events and building my network. So through that process, I got to where I wanted to be, just not being fulfilled. And that started, or it was the impetus or the catalyst for me starting this Archangel thing back in 2014, where I needed my own outlet. I needed to create another event, bringing people like me together, people who were more about mission and meaning than money, but money was the tool that fuels the mission. So it wasn't that money is an evil thing. It was, how do we make a lot of money to help even more people? And then it just blew up and grew. And now I quit real estate in 2016 and went all in with the Archangel project. And now we're doing super awesome.
Well, and I think one of the reasons I've taken such an admiration for you and Dr. Stephanie Steamer, your awesome fiance, is I wrote down some keywords when I think of Giovanni Marsico. And one of the things I wrote down was, I don't know if it's a real term, but like holistic richness. And when I think of, you definitely champion in my mind financial wealth for sure. I think it allows you to have a stable home and be able to say yes to a lot of things or no to a lot of things based on what you want to do, which is great. Relationship health. I think that you really take this seriously and always do and make it a real priority. I would assume, I haven't checked your calendar or your bank account, but even if you were to look there, your priorities would show up. And of course, health. So I think, I understand in your entrepreneurial journey that there was a spiritual, physical, combination where you were able to shed, a lot of weight. And it was sort of a body image, mental image topic that Stephanie asked me to dive into with you today. So what was your physical health doing alongside this entire career path that had so many, kind of like pauses or bookmarks and circling backs and, what was the physical health, the physical toll? And then when you were able to get as healthy and as strong and as fit as you are today, what was that process like?
It's funny because yesterday on Facebook now will show you posts from years ago, right? It was like 5 years ago, this is what you posted. And it was a photo of myself and I was extremely puffy. So that was 2015. And at the beginning of 2016, when I quit real estate, from January to September, I shed 70 pounds. And
wow.
and have basically kept it off since. But the equation I made in my head was that the additional weight I was carrying around was connected to unresolved pain. It was connected to challenging conversations I wasn't having. It was connected to not being aligned with who I am and the journey I am truly meant for. And when I quit real estate, it was also the catalyst for my own personal health transformation. It felt like the weight melted off. And I prioritized health optimization, and I prioritized daily ritual and routines. And for a struggle, I struggled with weight probably for 2 decades. And it's interesting. It's all connected back to that. When I mentioned when I stopped doing the events, it was the first time I felt anxiety and depression. To me, what those things are not something wrong with you. Like there may be chemical imbalances, that kind of thing. But for me, it's more around your body as an intuitive guide, almost like a GPS, using emotion to point you in the right direction. So for me, when I feel anxiety or what people would call depression or negative emotions, it's my body saying something's not aligned right now. Wake up and figure out what's going on. And the only reason I've come to that conclusion is because I've now experienced the opposite. In 2015 was the first time I had what I call a bliss attack, which is to me is the opposite of a panic attack. I felt every positive emotion flowing through me like a lightning bolt. And I hadn't experienced that kind of thing since those party days when I was producing events. And I've had more and more of those all the time. I haven't felt depression since I quit the real estate stuff. I haven't, and anxiety will only appear more as excitement around something big and fun that's happening. But my calmness and my peace levels have skyrocketed. It's fascinating. Like I don't ever, I don't feel fear in the same ways anymore. And I feel so much more calm and connected to myself and to Stephanie and to my kids and everything that's happening. And I feel like these emotions are a reactive guide to my path. And I feel so aligned with who I am and where I'm going and who I need to help.
And I relate to that. We've talked about this in private on, phone calls we've had where I've experienced something similar. I remember as a younger pro, as an athlete, I would be, anxiety ridden. I would be a person who thought a lot, sometimes at unwelcome times, mid game in between shifts, my mind would wander and the hamster upstairs would get spinning and run around. And I, at certain points in my life, wished away this thoughtfulness. I was like, why can't I be more robotic? Why can't I be more numb and just go out and play and not answer to what I recognize now? And I guess the start of me using it really is the podcast. I think it's a easy access point, which is why I've been able to transfer over and dip into this world while I'm still playing. But we had a conversation about like strengths unused or gifts that are untapped end up becoming your curse. And I think that, that was something that really sat with me when you explained that, where, Connor, if you're not going to use your empathy, if you're not going to use your creativity, if you're not going to use your thoughtfulness, it's going to haunt you and it's going to tap on your shoulder and show up as anxiety and remind you that it's not going anywhere until you pay respect to what you've been given. Do I have that about right?
100%.
And so closely related to that, I consider you an expert on imposter syndrome, which I think is something that I don't know if there's a person on earth that hasn't necessarily experienced this at some point. It's an uncomfortable feeling, but I'm trying to step into something that, I haven't been. I've been a hockey player for 20 years. I've played since I was 4 or 5. Being a thought leader, being a podcaster, being, I don't know if a coach to some is the right term yet. I wouldn't go that far. But when you go through imposter syndrome with one of your clients or through yourself, what are you trying to explain? How do you step into that and not run away from it?
It's such a fascinating topic in general, because first, let me share some angles, or a bunch of angles. I'm really lucky to be able to help a lot of different people who are they're at different parts of the journey when it comes to entrepreneurship and growing things. So we have people who are dreaming of one day, I want to start a business. And then we have people who are starting off, and then we have people who are scaling. And then we have people who are running 8 and 9 figure companies in our Archangel Council group. And at every single level, every single person has imposter syndrome. It's one of the most fascinating things for me, where everyone feels like I don't fit in here. And I've experienced that on a massive level in the past. And then I've had a few mentors say things that have blown my mind. One is, an imposter can't have imposter syndrome. Because if you're actually an imposter, you won't even, it's like you don't have that awareness. So the fact that you're anxious about these things means that you're not an imposter. And then on the flip side of that, Seth Godin, who's spoken at a bunch of our events, he's my favorite author. If you don't know him, read all his books. He's had 20 bestsellers with respect to things like marketing. And he's at the last big event he spoke at, he said, we are all imposters because we're growing. And the only way to grow, if you're someone like me who's a dreamer, who thinks about the future, who imagines change that can happen, or imagines growth or something better, you're not there yet. You're an imposter until you get there. So it's not necessarily even a bad thing. It's a sign of ambition. It's a sign of growth. And to accept the fact that we are always changing and evolving and getting better, hopefully, if we focus on craft and mastery. And I think being okay with that idea and that concept will make it so much better that you invest the time to train. And I love having conversations with you about the world of professional sports, because there's so much there are so many parallels between personal growth and professional growth, and then athletic growth, where the majority of your time is spent training. It's not performing. It's not on the ice, playing the actual game. That may be 20 minutes of your life in a week, or like whatever it is, versus the hours and hours you put into craft, into drills, into working out, into mindset, into all the things that prepare you for that 20 minutes. And that to me is the thing that most people don't talk about, the craft and the training versus the performing.
I found that really interesting, because I was lucky enough, you invited me to speak on, like, we'll use that word imposter again, like an expert panel on one of the Archangel Summit events. And I was honored, because I was on the other side of the screen trying to learn not long ago. And you brought that up. You're like, Connor, how much time are you actually spending in the moment of heat, in the moment of competition? And I don't even segregate the two. I don't even separate the two that way, because in my mind, literally the exact same intensity is brought to my first 5 minutes of foam rolling when I show up to the rink, to the first 3 strides I take on the ice for warm up, to the moment the puck drops. Like, there is no off switch when it's all blended into one. It's all performance to me. And I thought that was a really interesting point, where you were talking about how important the work behind the scenes is, so that when the lights are on, it's showtime, it's flow, it's automated. And I thought that, I was like, wow, Giovanni was able to pick something on my story that can relate to his entrepreneurs. Because I was thinking that, I'm like, okay, how am I going to relate to these people that work in the real world and sell real products and do all these things, while I'm just trying to, stand on top of these frozen swords and move a rubber disc around ice while not getting killed. And you kind of teed that one up for me. So I was very grateful that you had that insight that I guess I was just missing, because it was just second nature for me.
Right. And that's what makes you awesome.
There was one thing you were talking about earlier, and I want to, come back to in your physical health journey, was you made mention you were avoiding particularly hard conversations and conflict in your life. And a little birdie might have hinted me to go this direction as well. So I did consult your fiance, Steph, on this one. and she had mentioned that you maybe had some points in your life where you were avoiding hard conversations, either with yourself or others in conflict. And how did you first recognize that you had a problem with this? Because I think I share something similar. I like everyone to get along. I'm kind of the oldest brother of 3. So I was usually breaking up fights, then, really participating in them, that kind of thing. How did you learn that this was first an issue, and how did you go about fixing it?
Sometimes the biggest challenges and opportunities are innate to us because we just assume it's the way it's supposed to be. I first discovered all of this recently. I'm 44 years old, and over the past few years, I've really invested a lot of time, energy, and effort into doing personal work. And in working with different types of experts and therapists, there was one specific therapist who asked all the right questions. And one of them was, what do you do when someone says something or does something that's not aligned with your values? And it was like, oh, I don't do anything. And the reason I don't is because I want to be a peacekeeper, and I want to make sure everything is okay. And then in that process, doing a lot of uncovering to realize that pattern of behavior is connected to painful experiences as a kid, painful experiences as a teenager, and all sorts of things where every time I did speak up, it would cause trouble. So I trained myself to be quiet so that I would stay or avoid conflict. And that became a routine and a pattern that was almost programmed into my brain, in my subconscious, that I didn't realize was even happening. And I would, even as an adult, get in trouble for it's not for what I said, but for what I didn't say, or the lack of speaking up in the right times. So now, having uncovered that pattern, doing the work of figuring out, okay, taking maybe even baby steps when something happens, now my brain is like, oh, it's an opportunity to speak up. And that's the thing that's in my head all the time now. It's like, something happened, cool, it's an opportunity to speak up, and turning that even into a craft and into a practice where the more you do it, the easier it becomes, like anything, but the more you do it and the more you are aware of it, the easier it becomes. And then this year, one of my friends, a guy named Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who, have you ever met him? By the way, if you haven't, he should be on the show.
I haven't, but I've seen him all over your feed.
Yeah. He wrote a book, a groundbreaking book, I believe, called Personality Isn't Permanent, that changes everything around how a lot of people now think about the idea of personality. If someone listening, if you're listening and you've ever said the phrase, it's just the way I am, that's complete bull. We're not only always changing, we can actually proactively change even personality, even behavior, all of these things. So I would highly recommend that book. And I can connect you to Ben for him to be on this show, because that'd be awesome.
I would love that. And I have bookmarked that book. I'm nose deep in a couple different parenting books, because I'm trying to, crash for the crash study for the test in February when Lexi's due. And I guess I relate to something similar, where instead of, it wasn't necessarily a therapist who was able to guide me down this direction, but my wife, she would pick it up in moments of strife or conflict, either when others had wronged me, or maybe we had an argument, and my tell was I would go in, and the hamster upstairs would start to run, and I would get real quiet. I'd get real quiet, and then someone would say, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? And you'd get nothing out of me. And then all of a sudden, it would ramble. I would explode with, anger and vitriol and bite. And it's interesting because I didn't necessarily have this issue in hockey. Like when it comes to Connor Carrick, the hockey player, like I was all for, stand up for yourself, sort of some alpha male energy, a leader in the room kind of thing. I had no issue, even as far as, to an extent, when coaches had an issue with me and I thought, I've gotten yelled at, hey, it wasn't my turnover. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I'm not going the rest of the game missing shifts because you think I turned the puck over. It wasn't me. Like, you're watching the game. but it was in my personal life where, I kind of felt like I was too poised to get my feathers all ruffled up. I was above that. I wanted to stay in integrity or handle things with class. And you can do that, but, clamming up and going inward wasn't doing me or my friends or my wife, any favors. And I don't know if I'm necessarily at that light bulb moment as quickly as you right now, where I'm recognizing it as an opportunity. But I am starting to consciously realize that this is unconsciously something I've been doing.
Yeah, look for those mini opportunities when a thing happens and it gives you the chance to. I use the phrase "speak up" because that's ingrained. Even if it's, I was at a pharmacy the other day buying. I can't remember what I was buying, like some little gadget thing, and there was no one at the cash. And in the past, I would have literally waited 20 minutes until someone showed up. And I'm like, oh, cool, opportunity, speak up. So I was like, hey, is anyone here? Right? Sometimes it's such a silly thing, but it's first recognizing the program and then altering it in micro steps. And that leads to massive change.
Well, very similar, I think, to even the title of the book, and I'm not going to jump to conclusions what it's about by Ben Hardy, but the personality isn't permanent. I would consider myself today like an extroverted introvert. I have no problem speaking in groups of people, in small groups, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily something that energizes me. It's usually something I have to recover from, when I go home. I'm usually zonked, and, even after podcasts, I kind of, have my 5-10 minutes of Zen and re-energize before I go back into home life or doing whatever else we're doing. And I think it stems from, I was even the type of kid similar to this where, if I was at a hockey rink at a concession stand and I wanted whatever it was, let's call it chicken tenders, I would make my brother go ask. I'd be like, hey, Dad gave me $5. Can you go ask the girl over there for, I want to order a chicken tender. He'd be like 8 years old. He'd be 6. But he was the more outgoing one, oddly enough. I was, a little conservative and cautious. And I think some of those tendencies are, they didn't just die overnight. They're still inside me, somewhere. And sometimes they work great and service me, and other times, not so much. So it's something that I like to think I'm open-minded enough to change. And it's just up to me to figure out in what direction I want to head at any given time. But I do believe, very similar. And I think your friend Todd Herman, who you introduced me to with the alter ego, kind of helps with that too, where he's able to create certain lanes in which, okay, hockey Connor, this is how he, has permission to act. And this is family time, Connor, and this is podcast and so on and so forth. Is that something that, how do you relate to the different lanes of yourself? How are you able to go from a coaching call to leading, being on stage in front of, 4, 5, 10, however 1,000 people show up at your events, to dialing it back and being at home with the kids? How are you able to navigate these different arenas of life for yourself?
I love Todd and his book, and it's called The Alter Ego Effect. And the idea is that you can embody an alter ego in different circumstances. So in your context, the person on the ice, or for any athlete on the field or whatever it is, your alter ego may be super aggressive, dominating, and you don't want to bring that home to a family or to little kids. And then I know Todd, for him, when he goes home, his alter ego is Mr. Rogers. So that's who he is with the kids, with his children. And I love that. I don't go to that level. I try to stay calm, peaceful, grounded in all the things. And that's what's worked for me. So if you see me at one of our events with, 3,000 people, I'm completely the same energy as I am right now. People find it very weird, especially people in my world who do big events where there's so much anxiety and so much firefighting. And I've designed everything so that I can stay at this level and stay in parasympathetics and stay calm And it has allowed me to become more successful in things because there's never panic. One of the things that I love having conversations with Stephanie is the idea that this is my kind of philosophy, there's no utility for worry. There's no point. So if someone wants to worry or panic, it's more of a reaction, but it's not, I don't think it's useful unless there's an immediate danger, like there's a tiger in front of you. Okay, I get it. But that's more take action than sit and think about a negative, potentially future thing. The other cool thing I've realized is that fear is actually a good thing. And the only difference between excitement and worry is your perceived notion of the outcome. But in both cases, it's fear. You're experiencing the emotion of fear. But if you believe a positive outcome will happen, then you experience the fear as excitement. And if you believe a negative outcome might happen, you experience the fear as anxiety or worry or panic. In either context, you're thinking about the future. It's not a present moment thing. But your body reacts in the present moment. So we all have this choice to realize we're in control of the present moment by thinking about, by changing the state of how we think about the future. And it's the effort of shifting what you think might happen or could happen to a positive outcome. And it's hard work because we're kind of pre-programmed to be negative. But when you put in that energy and doing that work, you shift from paranoia, which everyone knows that word, to my favorite word, pronoia. And pronoia means the universe is conspiring in your favor. And I love that kind of thinking.
I started two things. I have seen you at your events, and you do have this groundedness, this unflappability. Is that a word? Where there's that even keelness, and it's very, frankly, it's contagious as soon as you're around someone. And we talk about this a lot in hockey where, the game's going poorly. You're one play away from resetting the whole nervous system of the team. You're on the road. And I remember, it was actually a scratch this game. It was a playoff game, Leafs versus Boston. But I'll never forget just the air suction out of a rink. There was, 25,000 fans in Boston. Boston had just scored. They won the opening, the next faceoff. They dump it in. And Ron Hainsey, who, if anyone's ever met Ron Hainsey, like he reads the paper before he puts his skates on and goes plays a game. Like he's sitting in his stall, taking a nap. He's half asleep. And then he throws his skates on and all of a sudden he's out there making plays. And I don't even know how many NHL games he's got. I think it's well over 1,000. But anyway, there's this little play. He's playing his offside. So it gets rimmed around and it's a tougher pickup off the wall. And he makes this, the building is still on fire. They're announcing the last goal. And he makes this little pop play to the middle off this rim and launches, Toronto in on a 3-on-2. And we didn't end up scoring, but like all of the fans in Boston, all the air was lost from the cheer. And you were just one play away. And I always admired that. I have it, when I'm playing well in my career, the building can be on fire and I'm still making plays. That's that flow state. And you're almost able to see, I don't know if you experience this, but when I'm playing, like the immediate threat, the person right in front of me is just noise. Like I've already got them Rubik's cubed and solved. I'm looking past them at layers 2 and 3, up the rink. And I feel like that you have this in a business sense where you see the issues in front of you. You've built the team to handle it. You're able to, douse the water with fire before it really gets too hot. And that allows you to play big. That allows you to play above the game and work on your craft, work on your business instead of like working in it all the time. How have you built the team? And I think part of it, personality-wise, is just who you are. To leverage that term the other way, I do feel like it comes naturally to you, some of this groundedness, at least as far as I can tell, as long as I've known you. But in terms of keeping it in those moments of heat, how have you been able to build the team and support staff? And I guess we can loop into the habits that serve this groundedness and peace that you have it. You can tell even in this podcast, like you just have that pause afterwards. You're in no rush to go anywhere. And how we're talking here is how you talk on stage.
Yeah. A few days ago, Stephanie and I were watching Joe Rogan interview Kanye West. And first, it was the most fascinating interview, and I actually fell in love with Kanye. Before, I wasn't really a fan before, and actually I thought he was crazy. And crazy is not always a bad thing. I think a lot of people are considered crazy until they do something, and all of a sudden they're a genius. But I never really understood him until that interview. And one of the things he said when I realized he's one of us, and I may be paraphrasing, but the phrase was, I live in the future and I time travel to the present to hang out once in a while. And I thought, whoa, that's me. I literally live in the future. I dream. Dreaming is my superpower. The thing that I was told to stop doing my whole childhood, like stop dreaming, get your head out of the clouds. That's who I am, and that's what I do. I live in the future, and I time travel back to right now to have this conversation with you. And what I've built is a dream team that allows me to keep dreaming. And then I come back and I tell them what the dream is and basically say, this is what the future looks like. And then they help me execute and help me build in present day the actual dream that I see for the future. And there's this beautiful relationship there. And going back to one of your analogies, I'm very grateful that in elementary school I played chess. I was actually on the chess team. And when you understand how chess works, you always have to be 10 moves. Like the chess masters, they've already finished the game before you even started. It's kind of crazy. And I'm nowhere near that level. And I got destroyed in the citywide grade 8 tournament by some other kid. But it's understanding that if you plan for 10 steps ahead and you're living out there, life becomes a little more predictable, where you don't have to worry too much about stuff going wrong, because you get really good at seeing patterns. You get really good at predicting outcomes. You get really good at understanding the path and journey you're on.
I love that. And so when you are in the future, like where are your moments of, how do you set up your day to foster this type of creativity? Like what does that actually look like in a day or in a week, so that you can leverage this genius that you have? When do you come back? Like when is your time spent in the future, and when do you come back?
I actually, and I'm glad you mentioned this when we first started, I actually have dreaming in my calendar. So I have dedicated dream time, which for some people it might be journaling, it might be ideation, but I believe that if you want to see what someone actually, what's important to them, check their calendar kind of thing. So I block off time in the mornings for ideation, for dreaming, for imagining, and I've turned it into a habit and a muscle. I also have a funny quirk that I discovered that most of my best ideas happen in the shower, and it happened without it wasn't proactive. It just sort of, I kept having these downloads. So I thought, if that's the case, what if I proactively turn my shower time into a meditative state and a flow state? So now I have a whole daily practice in my shower where I go in with the intention of cleaning myself, but also I go in with an idea or like a problem I want to solve or a puzzle. And then I have this thing, I can literally get into a flow state in the shower, and all time and space goes away. And then I start getting the most amazing downloads, and then I come out and write them all down. And it's become a daily habit.
You know, I was talking to Ian Happ, who's an outfielder for the Chicago Cubs, and we were talking about mental process. And I thought, who better to talk to than a baseball player? Just because their rate to failure is so high, the moments of tension, the length of it between pitches is so long compared to hockey. Can be generally pretty easy to get into flow state, right? Like the game's so fast, the pace of play is high. There's not very long TV timeouts. You know, baseball, there's just such a different pace. And he made mention that he's like, from the moment I leave the dugout, I can tell you every single movement, like it's so ingrained. It's such a trigger for me for performance that when I show up at the batter's box, like it's dominate. It's pure domination. That's my thought process. So that's something that I've tried to combine like Todd Herman's thought of the alter ego. Okay, what are the, some of the words and the way that I think of myself? What are some of the visualizing pictures that I'll use pre-game, pre-practice? I'll use a similar thing where like triggers. What can I use for a lot of hockey players, for example? Unfortunately, it's like the ammonia smelling salts, which I don't necessarily recommend because I can't imagine that's great for brain cells. I'll have to talk to Steph about that. But like I've used essential oils to smell, to signal it's game time. I kind of have certain words in the way that I tape my sticks. I think that's pretty brilliant. So in terms of the shower time, I want to reserve the last bit of this podcast to what does the future look like? What are you dreaming up? And what can we look forward to as witnesses to you and your journey?
So outside of wanting to be a real life superhero when I was a kid, the other big thing was movie producer. And it was always a fantasy because I thought, I'm not in Hollywood. I don't know anybody. And then through a series of serendipitous experiences, I started connecting with awesome people. One of them is one of my very good friends, Nick Nansen, who's won, I think, 16 Emmy Awards. He's a documentary director, producer, and super awesome entrepreneur. And he approached me 2 years ago about the idea of making a film. And I thought, no way. So we brainstormed, and right before that, he did one on human trafficking that was incredible, but very dramatic and like a negative storyline because it's human trafficking. I thought, I don't want to do that. If I'm going to make anything, it has to be positive, uplifting, motivational, inspirational, and aligned with who I am and the journey I'm on. So we came up with a film called Dreamer that is all about people who've had big dreams and have executed on them to create massive impact for a lot of people. And we produced the movie. We interviewed people like Richard Branson in the movie and Seth Godin's in the movie, Peter Diamandis from X Prize. So many awesome humans are in this film. Jim is in it. And it hasn't even hit distribution yet. Like we did a screening over the summer. We weren't going to release it until this winter or springtime, but because of the state of the world, we thought people need to see this. So we said, let's just do free screenings online. So we did a world premiere in a global week, and we've had over 100,000 people watch it. And then people saying that this movie changed their life. And I've been so blown away by all the positivity. And right now we're working on getting into hopefully every school everywhere. So that's plan one. And then massive distribution, maybe through like streaming platforms like the Netflixes and the Hulus and the Amazon Primes and stuff. So that changed everything, because now I realize my next massive dream is to be a platform to tell stories of people like us who are real life superheroes. And I want to invent and create a new genre of film called real life superhero movies, where it's not fiction, it's nonfiction superhero movies of telling real life stories of people who are doing really big things, and using that as a way of telling the stories of people that are friends of mine who are buddies, but or people in our network or community that I want people to know about as inspirational leaders, so that especially children or younger people have new kinds of role models to look up to, where it's like, look at what she did. Wow, she created this massive thing. And I want to be that connector to connecting those stories to the people who need to hear the stories.
I love your ability to see, I don't want to call it the unraveling, but some of the chaos and the madness out there in the world, and to ask all that to shift aside and to decide that I have this brilliant film, I have this brilliant dreamer documentary that I'm going to bring because people need it. I think that's why I've been so drawn to learn from you, is your ability to focus, dream, and to think of who you can help at the forefront. And I'm so happy for you that the feedback has been as outstanding as it has been. What was the most difficult part of that process? Because I imagine your first film, right? Like first big one of something of this nature. What was the imposter syndrome like that for this process? What was some of the nooks and crannies that you had to get into that you didn't know how difficult it might be?
It's so weird because there was none, and not because it's not conceit or anything weird like that. It's working with Nick and his team, who are literally the best. So Nick as director, and then his editors and director of photographies and all of the crew. I knew I was in really good hands. So what he did is left me up to doing my thing, which is dreaming, coming up with the storylines, coming up with who should be in the film, working together, collaborating. It was one of the most fun things I've ever done. There was literally zero anxiety around it. And we're still only at the beginning of what do we do and what do we do with this thing? And then what do we do next? Because I'm already thinking about, okay, next year we're going to start planning the next film and it's going to be 10 times bigger. I have no idea what it is yet, but that's the fun of it.
That's awesome. And I really do think, for me, the power of story and the power of role model is honestly the only reason I'm in the National Hockey League. Like I was able to, from such a young age, be introduced to older players and older storylines that made me believe, someone's going to play in the NHL. Why not me? And that was my storyline. That was my gift. That there was never a day that I woke up that I thought anybody else had a better chance than me, all things equal. We do know about, genetics and height and, and speed, size, and all those things, but I've been so blessed to have enough of a natural born skill set to be able to make good on that dream. But it's really through the power of role models and mentors that is the only reason I've been able to be as successful as I have. And is that why in particular you want to go through the school system first and make it available in schools? Do you think that is an area that can use a dose of optimism, a dose of dreaming, I guess a vote of confidence for dreaming?
Well, right now, I think the only may be a strong word, but the main source of role models for students is either pro athletes, which I love because there's a positive benefit, but then there's like celebrities and entertainers and, YouTube influencers and stuff where, if they don't understand what's possible, then that becomes a very narrow focus of what they want to do. And I believe there's a massive opportunity to connect stories of things that are almost impossible. I am where I am today because I've been exposed to people who I know who have now become friends, who have they're billionaires doing big things, but it's not about the money, it's about the change they're making. And I can up-level myself because I know that they exist. And I think for a lot of kids, if they don't know what's possible or who exists, their path becomes very narrow. So what I'm hoping to do is showcase what's possible and showcase people that actually exist that they can model in a different way, so that the next generation has new ideas that are different than just, well, I want to do this thing or that thing.
Well, and you've done that for me. Honestly, every Archangel event I've been able to be a part of, even through our conversation today, there's such a richness in the diversity of people and stories that I've been able to listen to. And you listen to Seth Godin, 8 years being, down back against the ropes as an entrepreneur and struggling and all the bad writing he did and all his bad ideas to, show up and break through, to have all the successful books he has. And, even for someone like yourself to, have success in what you're doing, in real estate, but something in the gut's off, something's not feeling right, and being able to, how old were you in your transition again?
In terms of
over to Archangel out of real estate?
It was 2016, so I was 40.
So that's a big number for me to think about transitioning and moving on in my life, because that's how long I want to play. Like my goal is whenever someone says, how long do you want to play? I want to play till I'm 40, which means, I'm 26 now. I have all this time, to dream and test and think about this theory and try and take some courses there and try and gain some experience there. to hopefully have a second and third and who knows, fourth career. I think we're both a little in the biohacking world. Think we can live to 120 or 150 or die trying kind of thing. That's awesome, Giovanni. And I guess selfishly, I do want to end with one question is, so I imagine there's a lot of people that come up to you at events. You are a busy man. You got your hands in a lot of things. You've got a family at home. Why have you been so receptive and warm towards me? And, maybe it's a little bit of a personal question, but I have felt, I think the term pronoia, the first time I ever really felt that was really a thing was after meeting someone like yourself, where I kind of had this hunger to serve and provide lessons of leadership that I felt I was gathering at a young age. It's pro sport is a selfish job. You're always thinking about what can I do for myself, of course, in the lens of how can I provide it my best for the team, but it really can be self-absorbed at times. And I felt that you've really helped me find my voice in a key period of my life, in a transformational time. And I got to ask you why.
I will answer that in a second. I want to ask you a quick question. Have you encountered in your sport many talent scouts? Have you ever met?
Yeah, like hockey scouts and that? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What do they look for?
They're looking for the raw tools, frankly, like hockey sense, skating, power, size, can this player have the emotional maturity to project at the next level? In a whole wide variety of things, and particularly, what kind of role. And I'm picking up where you're going with this, so I'm trying to keep it in hockey terms, but
that's okay. Well, one of my first Archangel business cards said superhero talent scout, because one of my gifts and superpowers is spotting others like me. And when I say that, it's the thing I'm looking for is someone who has the capability to influence and impact a lot of other people in a positive way. And my radar is always open for people like that. And I'm really, really good at finding them very quickly, or spotting them or scouting. So when I met you, it was just like, yep, there's one. He's one of us. So whenever I encounter someone like you, I feel like it's my responsibility to support that transformation for you, because I'm actually helping the millions of people that you're helping. I don't think an individual can change the world, but I can help you and support you and connect you and do all the things for you as the individual, because then that's exponential impact. And if I'm doing that for 1,000 people, 10,000, even 100,000 people like us, then we are literally going to change the world.
Well, let's follow that. Let's follow the numbers, and let's end with this, because I thought this was brilliant. I shared this actually with my dad recently. My dad and I talk all the time, and I said, Dad, I one of my mentors, this gentleman, Giovanni Marsico, he has this term for he wants to become a billionaire. And I think that I shared this with him, and he was nearly in tears on the phone, thinking of the size and scope and just the size of the heart. He's never met you. But when you say Giovanni Marsico wants to become a billionaire, what does that mean?
It means helping 1 billion people. Right. So, and that's what math, I love. I always infuse math somehow, but if I help 1,000 Connors who each have the capability of helping 1 million people, I've helped 1 billion people. There's leverage and exponentiality, if that's a word.
I believe you're well on your way, if not already past that. And Gio, you've been more than generous with your time and your brilliance. And I want to say thanks for throwing down. We'll have to do a side-by-side, see which one was better between you and Dr. Stephanie Stemus. So we'll get you the numbers because we'll keep it competitive. Competitiveness has its place.
Nice.
And but you both have been so gracious to Lexi and I, such leaders in our lives, such a breath of fresh air in world and in a brain that sometimes can have a negative bias. And I think you're championing optimism and dreaming. And I know you've been instrumental for me And for anyone that wants to find more of you, where can they find you? I know you're on Instagram, Facebook.
Instagram is the best one for my profiles. And then if you go to dreamerdocumentary.com, you can register to watch the film once it's released. I can't wait for that to happen on a big scale.
It's awesome. Congratulations again. I really appreciate your time today. And Gio, you're the best, and this podcast was everything I'd hoped. So selfishly, I'm happy. And for everyone in our audience, I know you'll learn a lot as well. Have a great rest of your night, man. Thanks for throwing down.
Thank you so much.
Wow, what a podcast. Want to say thank you to Giovanni for his time and effort in giving birth to this beauty here today. And I want to urge our listener, if you have not checked out his Dreamer documentary, go through his Instagram or through his Facebook group and find access to that, as he does a brilliant job. And I have yet to leave an interaction with Giovanni where I have not felt more empowered and capable myself of achieving my dreams. So I think that that is a gift that you owe to yourself. 3 points that I thought Gio brought out in our podcast today that I thought were particularly profound. One was his relationship with paranoia versus pronoia, and how the world is conspiring to help you. And I know just from my conversation with Giovanni today and in private, he really takes the time and effort to take this, 2 million year old brain, or however old our reptilian brain is, that can have a negative bias, that is so good at detecting threat and learning to consciously put on this lens to see the world as opportunity, to see the world as people, as filled with people looking to help you. This concept of pronoia, he really embodies it. And the second thing that I think Giovanni is so brilliant for is how he wants to become a billionaire, in the sense that he wants to help 1 billion people. I think particularly in the West, particularly in North America, we are taught, go get a job, get insurance, gain stability in your life. And those things are important for sure. But richness can be experienced in other ways. And for Giovanni, that comes in the form of helping people. And you can tell he walks the walk. This isn't something he puts on, just to make a quick buck. Like, he is as empathetic and as powerful a leader as I've been able to meet. And fortunately, I live in a pretty cool world where I'm able to meet some outstanding people, and Gio's right up there with as being one of the finest. And then finally, I want to wrap up with the concept that our gifts untapped become our curse, and will show up in our life as despair or anxiety or as depression. Giovanni talks about that in his experience when he left doing djing in high school to kind of, sell his soul of sort and go for the corporate dream. And he was able to, I think, come to terms with what was missing in his life. And he was able to recognize just how important this sense of alignment is for him. And I think we all share that. I know I do in my life when I'm out of whack and not living within my values and not doing things that fire me up and inspire me. I'm flat. Life's vanilla. Life's too dull. And frankly, at least for me anyway, I can really start to have a disliking for myself, knowing that I'm not being my best day in, day out for my family, for myself, and really for you and my community of leaders that we're trying to foster here. So check in with those 3 thoughts this week. How can we see the world through the lens of pronoia? How can we make steps towards maybe 1 billionaire is a tall task? How can we help 1 million people? How can we help 1,000 people? How can we help 1 person, and start there? And then finally, our gifts untapped will haunt us, will curse us. I know it has in my life. So check in, tune in with yourself. What part of you are you looking to bring to the light? What part of you are you not sharing with the world that's really doing the rest of us a disservice? So thank you for joining us here on the Curious Competitor podcast. I'm very excited to share this episode. Please share it with friends and family that can learn something as you have today. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to jamming again together next week.